The International Space Station program requires a lot of steps to get astronauts to the station to accomplish all the fantastic work we're doing. Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore's International Space Station trip was exciting and successful, marking another space travel milestone. Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, guess what? They return home today, 9 months late. These two of the most seasoned astronauts had seen everything from space's beauties to long-duration missions, tremendous obstacles. However, no one could have guessed the devastating news that would upend their lives upon returning to Earth. What changed everything for these astronauts? Complications of the mission. Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore's tenure on the ISS was supposed to be a milestone in space exploration. Things changed unexpectedly. Before we discuss the devastating news, let's examine how things became so convoluted. Why were they delayed, and did they stay in space longer than planned? Long-term space stays pose serious risks. Explore how these circumstances affected the astronauts' journey. In June 2024, astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore prepared for a typical week-and-a-half mission to the International Space Station. They were on Boeing's Starliner spaceship, a key aspect of NASA's long-term plan to use private businesses to transport personnel to and from the station. NASA wanted this mission to be the first crewed Starliner trip and prove Boeing could compete with SpaceX in space travel. Butch and Suni stayed on the International Space Station for 9 months longer than scheduled, extending the 10-day mission. It was exciting to launch from Cape Canaveral, Florida. However, things changed soon. After entering space, the Starliner spacecraft began to malfunction, making the return trip dangerous. Despite being experienced astronauts, these challenges kept the two on board the International Space Station longer than expected. They were trapped for months instead of returning to Earth after a few days. Boeing's Starliner competed with SpaceX's Dragon capsule, which had completed multiple crewed missions to the International Space Station. SpaceX developed its spacecraft quickly to suit NASA's crewed mission objectives, but Boeing took longer. Starliner's software and hardware issues showed how much work was left to finish the spacecraft. SpaceX's Dragon, which Butch and Suni used to return to Earth, was the gold standard for private spaceflight. The Starliner difficulties and Boeing's spacesuit delays complicated matters. Boeing's suits were big and antiquated, whereas SpaceX's sleek, futuristic suits became standard for the Dragon capsule crew. New, well-fitted SpaceX suits were needed before they could return to Earth. This delay was one of numerous issues that prolonged their space stay. NASA wanted a trustworthy list of commercial companies to transport humans to and from the International Space Station to reduce its dependence on Russian spacecraft. Starliner's difficulties cast doubt on Boeing's leadership in this project. Boeing had gotten significant financing from NASA and was initially considered a critical player, but it now faced severe issues about its ongoing position in the space program. Two astronauts made the best of their position for months. After the Starliner faults were discovered, they were easily integrated into ISS operations. Despite obstacles, their extended stay was productive. Both experienced astronauts conducted scientific experiments and spacewalks to contribute to the mission. Suni broke records, including the most spacewalk hours by a female astronaut. Space travel is a privilege and a sacrifice. Astronauts work for years for every mission. Their extended stay on the International Space Station was unexpected, but it gave them a chance to gain experience most astronauts can only dream of. To the average person, 9 months in space may seem like a burden. This lengthy mission didn't disappoint them. It was a chance to keep doing what they were trained for, even if it wasn't ideal. A long and dramatic trip ended with their SpaceX Dragon capsule returning to Earth. They received devastating news at the hospital, but more on that later. Stuck in space. Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore understood their time on the International Space Station would be filled with both mundane and remarkable events. NASA astronauts maintained the International Space Station, conducted experiments, and performed crucial spacewalks. However, their 9 months hovering 250 miles above Earth provided a unique opportunity for personal introspection and amusement. Suni and Butch found months in zero gravity, challenging and rewarding. They spent their days exercising and watching sunrises and sunsets. Even though they were part of a crew working to advance space and science, space's solitude and unusual surroundings made every task and moment feel different. Spaceflight wasn't simply about spacewalks and the International Space Station. It also means learning a new rhythm away from Earth. Butch woke up at 4:30, while Suni woke up at 6:30. The International Space Station runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and astronauts have rigid schedules that include scientific experiments and personal time. Voting in space was shocking. Suni and Butch participated in the 2025 U.S. presidential election, an unusual but crucial astronaut job. NASA sent encrypted vote sheets via email from Mission Control in Houston to enable space voting. After receiving their ballots, astronauts filled them out and sent them to satellites for transmission to ground terminals. The astronauts' county clerks received the ballots. Voting from orbit was a civic duty for Suni. "We have a vital role as citizens," she continued. Butch agreed, saying NASA made it easy to vote from space. Despite the obstacles of space travel, astronauts felt connected to Earth and their duty as engaged citizens. Suni and Butch's Christmas on the ISS was a fun and memorable moment. In Santa hats and reindeer antlers, astronauts sent holiday messages to their families on Earth. They rarely had a break from their hard labor, even briefly. The station's astronauts, including Butch and Suni, laughed as candy canes floated around the cabin and their crew threw a microphone to wish well. Suni's zero-gravity haircut made the experience even more special. Suni's hair became ethereal and gravity-defying without gravity, which would take hours of product to imitate on Earth. The festive happiness on the International Space Station showed that even in the most remote and technical environment, there remained a place for joy. Things weren't easy for Butch and Suni in space. They had to keep the station running as astronauts on a protracted journey. This required extended hours in space for maintenance and repairs, often outside the station. Suni and Nick Hague performed critical International Space Station repairs on a spacewalk in January. They repaired station orientation equipment, installed light filters on the NICER X-ray telescope, and replaced docking adapter components. To continue this critical work, Butch and Suni went on another spacewalk a few weeks later. Space's harsh environment made even little mistakes dangerous. Therefore, these activities required accuracy and rigorous training. Suni and Butch enjoyed the task despite the hurdles. They felt purposeful contributing directly to maintaining a structure vital to space exploration for years. The International Space Station perspective is unique. In 24 hours, the station orbits Earth 16 times at high speed. Butch and Suni saw 16 breathtaking sunrises and sunsets daily. Few people on Earth would ever have this perspective, which gave them time to contemplate. Suni changed her mind about Earth after seeing it from space. She often thought about how fragile the Earth is and how vital it is to protect it. With no borders visible from orbit, it showed how interwoven humanity is. Suni and Butch would look out at the Earth in calm wonder at its beauty and the immensity of space. Sometimes, letters from family, co-workers, and even strangers helped them feel at home. Butch found the experience sobering and grounding because he realized how insignificant human concerns are in the universe. After nearly 9 months in orbit, Butch and Suni prepared for Earth in March. After their mission, they handed over the keys to the next astronaut crew. Butch and Suni, who had spent so much time on the ISS, were upset when their successors landed in a SpaceX capsule. Butch rang a bell to signal the end of their mission, and Suni turned over leadership to cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin. They prepared for re-entry with expectation and pride. They worked tirelessly to maintain the International Space Station, conduct experiments, and assist NASA's space exploration. We must comprehend how they received the devastating news before sharing it. Prolonged space travel causes physical and mental health difficulties. In microgravity, astronauts must exercise, but they must also do other things to keep fit, safe, and healthy. They also need to know how to handle unexpected illnesses and injuries in remote areas. Astronauts' health problems start when they depart Earth's atmosphere. The human body reacts differently in microgravity. Lack of gravity causes the body to adjust in damaging ways over time. Loss of bone density is a major issue. The weight of the body stresses bones in normal gravity. Without spatial stress, bones deteriorate. Suni and Butch had to fight brittle, fracture-prone bones on their journey. Astronauts often have muscular atrophy. Without gravity, muscles atrophy and weaken in space. This impacts locomotion and spacewalks. Butch and Suni had to combat this by exercising daily for lengthy periods. For muscle maintenance and atrophy prevention, they used the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, treadmills, and cycling machines. Astronauts' health difficulties go beyond bone and muscle loss. The body shifts fluid in microgravity. Gravity draws fluids down to our lower extremities on Earth, but in space, they redistribute, creating face puffiness and eye pressure. Suni and Butch had to watch for visual changes due to fluid distribution shifts. Special medical instruments on their space station helped astronauts monitor fluid fluctuations. Regular eye exams assessed their vision. Space sickness has special issues. Even in a controlled, hygienic environment, astronauts' lack of earthly resources makes treating diseases and infections difficult. Visiting a doctor isn't enough if an astronaut like Suni or Butch gets sick during their mission. Space stations have limited medical resources compared to hospitals. Astronauts must use multiple strategies to treat common illnesses. Before leaving Earth, astronauts learn basic medical procedures. This involves learning how to treat medical emergencies, such as giving medication or measuring blood pressure or temperature. The International Space Station has a tiny medical kit, and astronauts can use telemedicine to consult with doctors on Earth for remote treatment advice. If an astronaut contracted a bacterial infection, they would need the station's medical kits. Antibiotics and other drugs are available, although limited. Astronauts may have to stay on the station and manage their disease with what they have because returning to Earth for treatment is challenging. Space is harsh, and even minor injuries can be serious. While a tiny cut may be easy to repair on Earth, it could cause issues in space if not properly treated. They would first treat sprains, burns, and cuts with their minimal medical supplies. Astronauts are trained to stabilize major injuries. Lack of gravity makes splinting a limb harder, but astronauts don't have to worry about gravity worsening injuries. So, what happened with Suni and Butch? Heartbreaking news. Astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore always knew the risks. They had years of training, preparation, and space life obstacles, but nothing could have prepared them for the news following their 9-month unplanned stay on the ISS. It was sad to learn they would come home on SpaceX Crew 9. They were eager to see Earth, breathe fresh air, and experience gravity again. While they were eager to finish their voyage, no one could have imagined the terrible news for Starliner astronauts. After months in microgravity, Suni and Butch followed the meticulous ritual all astronauts follow to be healthy. They used treadmills, resistance machines, and bikes daily. They understood that staying fit in space was crucial because, without gravity to preserve bone density and muscle mass, their bodies would shift uncontrollably. Despite their best efforts, no amount of exercise could totally mitigate the impacts of long-term space exposure. David Muir initially reported on it. "This worries me. Their dreams will never come true again." Suni and Butch were eager to adjust to gravity after returning to Earth. Despite their expectations, their first doctor appointment was difficult. Their post-mission medical reports were distressing. Spaceflight had weakened Suni and Butch's bones and muscles. The impacts were worse than expected. Although their space workouts had kept them strong, their bones and muscles had weakened. Even after months of rehabilitation, their bone density was well below average. When returning to Earth after a long mission, astronauts worry about bone loss. Suni and Butch's experience showed astronauts' struggles in microgravity. Astronauts also face muscle atrophy. Without weight support in space, muscles weaken and atrophy. Both Suni and Butch saw muscle loss despite their training habits. The physical toll of space travel would require months or years of physical therapy to re-establish strength and muscular mass. Doctors worried recovery would take longer than planned. After returning to Earth, astronauts usually undergo rehabilitation, but Suni and Butch's condition required extra time to adjust to gravity. The physicians didn't know if they would ever recover their pre-mission fitness or be able to return to space. Nobody expected space to take such a toll on their bodies. Suni found it especially difficult. She was one of NASA's most accomplished astronauts, spending nearly 300 days in space, and always kept herself in top shape. She followed all physicians' and trainers' instructions, but nothing could have prepared her for the damage caused by extended microgravity. Suni realized that her space career may end with her bone density and muscle mass at an all-time low. Butch had always been strong and resilient. Despite the unforeseen prolongation, he remained enthusiastic during his mission. His body told a different narrative now. Losing bone mass and muscle function had made him weaker than expected. His return to Earth was supposed to be a triumphant homecoming, but it started a grueling rehabilitation process. The question everyone had was if they could return to space. The medical staff was unsure. Suni and Butch may recover, but they may not. No one expected the harsh realities of spaceflight to take their toll. Suni and Butch may not recover enough strength for space missions, even with the greatest rehabilitation methods. Even if they did, they might have the same problems again. The possibility of Suni and Butch returning to space remains a red signal. After their time in space, they had to deal with this awful concept as they rebuilt their lives. Their struggles reminded them that space exploration, while exciting and rewarding, is expensive, a price astronauts like Suni and Butch would pay forever. Will the pair totally recover? Share in the comments.